Well, hello everybody. Pretty Green Vinyl Guy here. Hope everybody's having a great day. I am, because I'm on holiday. So I wanted to catch up on some videos, and I thought I would start off with a look at kind of 4 albums that I got interested in based on a purchase last week. And they are basically the first greatest hits packages that all 4 Beatles did post-Beatles. And I'm going to go in chronological order because that sort of has a lot to do with what's on these albums. And we'll have a little discussion, and I probably give them a ranking out of 10. And if you agree with me or disagree with me, it's all good. You can let me know in the comments below. And like anybody that rates an album, how I feel today and how I feel tomorrow, it could change, right? So anyway, I'm going to start off with the first one, the first Beatle to release a solo, greatest hits, and that was John. And John released Shaved Fish in 1975. Now, John, Ringo, and George had all decided to leave Capitol Records at the end of their contract. And John started the ball rolling by throwing out a greatest hits to fulfill his record contract with Capitol Records. And this went on to be his last album for 5 years. Of course, starting over, Double Fantasy, pardon me, with Just Like Starting Over was 1980. And so Shaved Fish was a pretty good compilation of John's solo work. A number of the songs had not been released on an album before. They were singles. I believe Cold Turkey, Give Peace a Chance, Power to the People. I think those were all singles. Interestingly, John didn't have a lot of top 10 singles. I think he's tied with Ringo, funny enough. I think he had 8 top 10 singles, and I think he had 2 number ones. Whatever Gets You Through the Night, which is on the album with Elton John, and I believe Just Like Starting Over was his only other number one. If I'm not mistaken, though, Imagine was never released as a single. It was only released on the Imagine album. And you have to assume that if that was released as a single, it would have hit number 1 probably in the UK. Anyway, so let's go through the album. So side 1 starts with a shortened version of Give Peace a Chance with John and Yoko. That was recorded in the hotel room in Montreal, Canada. Cold Turkey is the second track about coming off of heroin, I believe. Instant Karma, which is just a great song, still one of my all-time favorite Lennon songs. Power to the People, Mother, and Woman is Nigger of the World. So that's side 1. Side 2 opens with the iconic Imagine, his number 1 with Elton John, Whatever Gets You Through the Night, Mind Games, number 9 Dream, and interesting, this was the other single, Merry Christmas, the War's Over. That was only released as a single. And a reprise of Give Peace a Chance. So, if you don't know a lot about John's solo work, this is a great place to start. Personally, my favorite Lennon solo albums are Plastic Ono Band and Imagine. And, this is a great place to start. Obviously, there's some iconic songs here. There's not really much to complain about. I don't even know really from the era what I would add to this. But it's a good solid, I'd give it an 8 out of 10. There you have it. Shaved Fish. I think the name Shaved Fish was a Japanese sort of powdered dried fish. Obviously, Yoko might have had a bit of influence on that. But yeah, Dr. Winston O'Boogie, Shaved Fish. I'll show you the vinyl. That's on the purple Capitol Records. This is a Canadian pressing. You you can tell this was a first press because Give Peace a Chance is credited to Lennon and McCartney, whereas on other releases it's just credited to John. So yeah, that's Shaved Fish. So in chronological order, I should preface that by saying that it didn't chart that well. And that sort of adds to the story as we go along. It did a bit better in the UK, but it didn't chart that well in the US. And John was having troubles at that time in the US, with immigration and his anti-war stance, and he was perceived as a bit of a character. So let's move on. So following John was Ringo, Blast from Your Past. This was Ringo's first greatest hits, also in 1975, also on Capitol Records. And, as I said, Ringo actually was tied with John for top 10 singles. And Ringo was on a bit of a roll when the Beatles broke up. In fact, Ringo had 2 number ones before John Lennon had his first. And I believe his first 2 were You're 16 and Photograph, which are both on here. I think when I think of Ringo, his iconic song is It Don't Come Easy, which is, I think, just a great song. And Oh My, which is on side 2 of this. So, it's a decent album. It's a good Sunday afternoon listen. I don't even think I've ever listened to a full Ringo album. So, for me, this is enough. I don't think I need to go too deeper than this. And so side 1, You're 16, which was his first number 1. And it was a pretty big hit in England. I remember that as a kid. The No No Song, which is his, saying no to drugs and alcohol. And It Don't Come Easy, which Ringo actually wrote. Photograph, which he wrote with George. And Back Off Bungaloo. Side 2 starts with Only You, Buku of Blues, Oh My, which he also wrote and is also a great song, early 1970. And it finishes with a Lennon song, I'm the Greatest, which John wrote for Ringo. So, yeah, I mean, it's a decent little album. Side 1's probably much stronger than side 2. It's a 6 out of 10, I think. 7 maybe on a great day. But, yeah. The vinyl's cool. I like this red apple. It's kind of cool. I want to say this was the last album released on Apple Records until 1990 when they brought back. So yeah, that's George's solo. Just gonna set that there. Blast from Your Past. As far as charting, it didn't do very well at all. I think it reached number 30 in the UK, and I don't think it charted at all in the United States. So that leaves us with George, who Capitol Records already knew was leaving, and George had just put out his last album. So Capitol took it upon themselves to put out a George Greatest Hits, sort of beat him to it. And I guess Capitol had learnt from John and Ringo's and the lack of success they had, so Capitol decided to stack side 1 of George Harrison's best with Beatles songs. All George songs. Which is interesting because George was probably the most prolific in the early post-Beatles. He had put out, 2 or 3 fantastic albums with quite good success and some great singles, many of which are on here. And, I guess Capitol wanted a hit, they'd already invested in John and Ringo and didn't get much for it. So I guess they thought, well, we're gonna put George's top songs on side 1. So side 1 starts with Something, If I Needed Someone, Here Comes the Sun, Taxman, Think for Yourself, For You Blue, and the great While My Guitar Gently Weeps. So that's side one. I mean, the only thing you could argue is there's no Sitar George on this, which I think would have bothered George because that was very close to his heart. And then we go into side two, My Sweet Lord, Give Me Love, Give Me Peace on Earth, You, Bangladesh, Dark Horse, and the amazing What Is Life. So, I mean, it's still an amazing album. I just feel that, they probably shouldn't have stacked the Beatles songs on there. Interestingly, George, up until today, maybe Paul he still has time, I guess, and Ringo, who knows? Ringo's got a new album coming out too. My Sweet Lord was the first post-Beatle number one, and I've Got My Mind Set on You, which was George's last number one. That's the biggest spread of number ones from Beatles. So it's hard to rate this one because obviously there's so many great songs on here. It's a great Sunday afternoon listen. You want a little Beatles, a little George inspired. I guess I'd give it an 8 out of 10. I just want to hear just more George solo. And yeah, and here's the vinyl. So again, on Capitol. Nice with the pictures of George's face on there. And all of these are inexpensive. In fact, all four of them are. I don't think you'd pay more than, I think the Ringo you can get for $5 or $6. And I think the other three are sort of in the $10 mark. So that leaves us with Paul. And Paul decided to stay with Capitol Records. So he went all the way to 1977. And he produced Wings' Greatest, which has some controversy as well because, first off, they're not all Wings songs. There's a couple of Paul solos on here. Another Day and Uncle Albert are both solo songs. He also had the controversy of the breakup of Wings right around this time. You can see on the back, the photo just shows Paul, Linda, and Denny Lane. And the drummer and the bass player had already left, and they were airbrushed out of the photo. So you only get the three members, even though they played on all the songs. I guess Paul was a little pissed off, so he had them airbrushed out. And, I mean, what can you say? I mean, it's got all the big hitters on here. Another Day, Silly Love Songs, the theme for Live and Let Die, Junior's Farm, which is a great old rocker, With a Little Luck, and 1973's Band on the Run. And side two starts with Uncle Albert, Admiral Halsey, Hi, 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 which is not one of my favorite songs, Let Him In, My Love, Jet, and Mull of Kintyre. Interesting, not all of Paul's albums are represented, and some are represented twice. Listen to What the Man Said probably was a number one in the US, and probably I would have replaced that with Hi, Hi, Hi. And yeah, the story on the statue is kind of cool. This was something that Linda really wanted, and Paul bought it for her. And she had this vision of it being on the cover of the album, so she flew a photographer up to the Alps in a helicopter to take this iconic photo of this statue, dropped it in some snow, and there you have the cover of Wings' Greatest. So I've rated the other albums, and I have this love-hate with Paul. I mean, I love Paul, and he can write a hell of a pop song, and these are more in that pop song sense. That being said, it probably is the strongest of the four greatest hits packages, and therefore I'd give this 9 out of 10. And yeah, so Wings' Greatest, 9 out of 10. Shaved Fish, 8 out of 10. Best of George, 8 out of 10. And Blast from Your Past, 6 out of 10. Let me know if you agree or disagree below. And yeah, I hope you found that interesting. And they're all great ways to introduce yourself to post-Beatles. Anyway, enjoy your day, everybody, and have a great one. Cheers!